But the question that I would ask every pastor is, what are we losing by not going there? What is the kingdom losing by not looking at this opportunity to meet people where they are, because they're by the millions?
Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. Through this podcast, we'll talk about the technological innovations within the church. But more than tech for tech itself, we'll address deeper questions. Is disciple making possible digitally? How should we approach the digital mission field? Can a biblically grounded church operate in digital space? Oh, and where does the metaverse fit into all this? Whether you're a big or small church, an established church, or a startup church plant, the Church Digital's goal is to help churches like yours learn to be a multiplying church, digitally and physically. Our heart, that churches like yours would discover a newfound focus on disciple making that will revolutionize your church. And now, here's your host, Jeff Reed.
All right, hey everybody, happy Labor Day. Hey, it's Jeff with the Church Digital Podcast. Looking forward to this conversation. Digital Church Network, Leadership Network, so much other fun stuff. And we got a really interesting conversation centered around today. It's funny. I'm the guy that always got like a lot of side hustles. And hey, that's a great idea. Let's really move towards that. And the guest today in this conversation, I just kind of walked into this incredible opportunity, incredible vision. It's like, man, I really just want to be a part of this thing and actually see how it rolls out. And so for the conversation, we're bringing in Joey Santos. Hey, Joey, how you doing?
Hey, Jeff, how you doing, man? Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. And so Joey is, I feel like I've known this guy for decades, but it's just been like,
I know, right?
Like right before COVID. Like it's just been a couple of years stretch here.
It was one of those it was very accidental, actually. Like all of a sudden we're in the same room. It was like
kind of got thrust together in a unique situation. So it's good. It's like, this is totally off topic, but it's like in the action movies where the guy and the girl who have nothing to do with each other go through the traumatic experience of whatever the action is, and all of a sudden they're like dating afterwards. Joey, you're my action hero.
I know.
Like we just got kind of put together in this unique situation, and oh man, this is all sorts of weird.
Exactly.
Don't take this too far. That's not where I'm going. But oh my gosh, so good. So Joey's my global innovations. No, global innovations pastor, right? Is that the right title?
No, that's integration, man.
Integration.
You gotta mix me up with J-Mo. That's what happens.
Listen, if you're gonna get confused with anybody, it's a good thing to get confused with Jason Morris.
You got it.
That's a good place to go. But as global integration pastor with Christ Church, Joey's been blessed with a great church that has vision and understanding of how digital operates, and really has really been quietly kind of setting the standard and really doing some creative things in digital space. So you can check out, what's the website? ourchristchurch.com.
ourchristchurch.com.
And so check that out. But that's not even really the thing that we want to talk about in this conversation. That was just a commercial for Joey up at the front. Now, Joey, one of the things that I love about Joey, actually, Joey's been on the podcast maybe pre-COVID. It's been quite some time. We had him on long ago. Talking about, unique expressions of church. We've talked a lot about some unique expressions lately, but Joey historically was running church in a bar, and so was really utilizing the online broadcast to run a micro location that was located at a physical bar up there in Ohio. And so maybe Joey, just even to start to kick off the conversation, why don't you tell us a little bit about that bar? Is that still going? Maybe over the past couple of years, how have things shifted, and maybe what lessons have you learned through it?
I know. I think it was so interesting when we first talked about this, like almost 3 years ago, right? We're talking about the online and how the online church was impacting every church dynamics and routines. And we were talking about the house campuses and people meeting in houses, and this bar owner started conversations like, man, what would it look like to have a church in my bar? And I was like, you know what? That sounds interesting. Let's do it. So we jumped right into it, and we're trying to figure it out. I'll tell you this. I think the lesson that we learned right off the bat, because we had a very good first year, and then COVID came around and forced us to take a break. And that was one of the best things that happened to us. The first time we launched the Church the Bar, we did it in a way of pretty much replicating the experience that you have in a streaming service, right? So we're literally like broadcasting live from the auditorium. So we had all the gear. We set up in a way that we took over the entire bar sound system and TV. So we could broadcast in every TV and broadcast the sound to the entire bar. But we're just streaming the services. And what we learned was there was a big rotation of first timers. People come for the first time, they will never come back. They'll come for the first time and never come back. And the thing that we learned from it is that they were like, well, to do this here, I can do this at home. And I can just sit in my house and watch it, because when you watch the service, you're not talking. When you're watching the service, you just pay attention to what's going on the screen. People don't go to the bar to just watch something. Even if you go to watch live music, which this bar offers live music, you're pretty much talking the entire time you have live music. Well, that's what we learned. Going to the next, post-COVID back in the bar, we're like, let's just change this whole thing. And we completely flipped how we do services in terms of meeting the audience needs. And that's what we did. So we changed it from three songs like we do on the stage to one song pre-recorded on locations. Something that can control the environment, control the sound. We pre-record the sermon, and the message is recorded. Is the same message that we preach in the main campus, but the difference is we stop every 5-7 minutes, make a point, ask a question, and put 5 minutes on the clock to have the discussion live. So now you have this opportunity that you're not just listening, but you're participating in a conversation about the message. And that's when we start experiencing like results, right? That's when people are like, I want to come here and stay. And that's now we're experiencing that. Now we're experiencing that. I like this. It's community-based. It's about the conversations. Doesn't matter who's preaching. I just want to talk. And then you have the results, and right by the bar, there's a river, Little Miami River. That's where we have our baptisms now. Now we're getting people getting baptized because of the experience they're having, the conversations that they're having, how they're growing spiritually. So I think in a short answer, that's what's going on with the church. The bar has been an incredible experience. For sure, and extended out to a Wednesday night meeting. So we not only meet on Sunday mornings, but we're having a Wednesday nights in the basement. Come very informal. We're going to dig deeper into what we learned on Sunday, but still the same thing. Let's sit around and have conversations. There's no video recording. There's nothing. It's just community. Let's sit down. Let's talk. What's going on in your life? And we'll go from there. So that's what's going on in the Church the Bar right now.
That's beautiful. Now, with the church in a bar, like, are you seeing people from Christ Church? Are they just coming to the different microsite location? Are you seeing people from other churches come in? Like, what type of person are you really starting to connect with when you're doing church in a bar now?
Yeah, that is an interesting. The first round before COVID, the majority of people was from our church because we promoted that way. Like we approach it as a church planting, saying, hey, we need a group of people to go there and start volunteering and be part of it. And is gradually that number went down. Like people are like, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I don't feel like I'm getting it, because they are there expecting to have the big church experience. And what changed post-COVID is that the number one thing that changed post-COVID is like I became the pastor in that location. So I'm there every Sunday, right? So they didn't have that before. They just had volunteers running it. Now I'm the pastor and I'm setting it up. I'm doing this whole dynamic that when you do in church planting. But around the bar, we had beers, metal signs around. Well, we made metal signs, but church the bar Sundays 10:20 a.m. That's the majority of the people that are attending the church right now. That's people that come Saturday nights, Friday nights, come to party, to drink, see the sign, and like, you know what? I can check this out. And it's kind of interesting because right now they're the core people at the bar, the church, the bar. They're my core volunteers. They're the most faithful ones. So I would say that right now the vast majority of people are people that came straight out of the bar, and it's coming to Sunday morning service.
That's beautiful. What we're seeing, I mean, once again, this is just another one of these examples, right? Where if you do something different, you reach a different person. And you know, Joey, you're seeing that as you're doing church in a bar, not a branded micro location or like a multi-site location, just trying to copy and paste what a typical church service is, but you're reimagining it. You're making it contextually fit more within the bar locale. And as a result of that, you're reaching people that the buildings aren't going to reach. Well, listen, we can talk about church in a bar all day long, but I want to add another wrinkle to this. You know, Joey and I were having a conversation. I don't know, maybe somewhere June, July. And, you know, I challenged Joey, like I challenge a lot of pastors. Hey, man, start thinking about what you could do in virtual reality. Start thinking about what the metaverse could look like. And so I was jumping on this call with Joey. Joey simply said one of these words that was life-giving to me. Hey, Jeff, what do you think about starting a bar in the metaverse? Now, this was intriguing to me. Well, Joey, why don't you talk a little bit about this? Like, I mean, you told me, hey, why don't we start a bar? What's going through your head? How did you get to this place of even starting a bar in virtual reality?
I think, you know, you got that train going because you've been talking about metaverse for a while now, and you've been exposing the potential. So, you know, like most people that get interested in this, I went and got my VR set, and I was like, let me check out what Jeff's talking about, and start looking at some of these churches going online, going on a virtual reality. And the thing I impressed me the most by visiting other churches on a VR space in other locations, other activities, is actually to see what we see at the bar. That's people, they're completely lost. They're looking for answers, and they're trying to meet people to have those conversations. And it hit me because that's the experience that I have in person at the bar every week. And not only on the weekends, like I'm not ashamed to say I hang out at the bar a lot because that became our location. So I'm at the bar outside Sunday, Wednesday nights. I'm the bar a lot. I was there Saturday nights meeting people, and because I'm there, the owners introduced me to all his friends as, here's the pastor of the bar. That's how they know. The staff introduced me to people. Here's the pastor of the bar. So I'm known there as the pastor of the bar. And because of that, people actually say, hey, they ask questions. People in the middle of a busy bar ask me before, can you pray for me right now? I'm going through this. And I got to pray for people in the middle of a bar. So looking at that experience and see what I saw in the VR, I was like, do you know what? We already know the environment in an in-person experience. Let's just build the same thing on a VR, because it's going to be familiar for me, for other volunteers that are already involved, to go in and like, let's sit in the bar. People are going to come in the bar to talk, to fellowship, to have conversations. We can have those conversations. They're not strange for us. So we're like, let's try something new that's not the regular church format, and let's go in a way is familiar to us. But I see the potential because people go to have those conversations, and I want to have those conversations with them right there.
So the idea here then would be to have these types of conversations, to build a bar, an environment to foster those types of conversations in virtual reality.
Yeah.
You know, and more specifically, if you're aware of virtual reality, like the world that we're considering going into is VR chat, which, if you know the podcast, I commonly call that the red light district. DJ Silver calls it the Wild Wild West. Like, this is the world where it's estimated that 40 to 50% of its inhabitants are having virtual sex in private rooms. Hey, so let's open up a bar so that we can talk with people. You know, it's interesting. Like, I have talked with Christ-centered recovery organizational leaders. I've pitched this idea because I'm like, hey, I want to know what your feedback is, like what your thought is, thinking I'm about to get like yelled at. And surprisingly, I wasn't. So I'm curious, as you've thought of this, Joey, like how much positive feedback, how much negative feedback, what have been some of the conversations that you've received when you've started thinking and talking about the idea of doing this bar in virtual reality?
I think it's kind of like everything else, whatever is new. Right now, I'm having a hard time getting across to people just the virtual reality alone, right? Because again, for a lot of people, they cannot even grasp those things are real. And I tell people, the fact that a virtual doesn't change the fact that's real. It's real for the people that are in there. They're trying to look for answers in conversations. So just like for us, when we launched the church at the bar, our church family, it was like, it makes sense because they already know all the crazy stuff we're already doing online, right? So it was very interesting for our church family. They're like, yeah, that sounds great, which was great to have the feedback. But churches around us, they were very vocal about how crazy we were by putting a church at the bar. And I think that's the reactions that we get. We got this very mixed reactions. The first reaction is really about this virtual reality thing. We should not get in there because you should not get in there because it's not real. And I'll tell people, I said, I'll tell you this, get your set, I'll hold your hand and we're going to walk together and you're going to see how real it actually is. But I think what people get confused, like if you're going to set up a bar in a virtual reality, people are not going to be able to drink. People are not, like I said, it's about the conversations. It's about the connections. So I think it's just like you and I had a conversation years ago about some concepts for online church and how that's so new to some churches and the church concept. I think we're back in the same territory right now of a VR being like, oh man, here we go again, something new, and people don't understand, people don't see it. I was in Chicago just 2 weeks ago. And I was with a friend of mine, a pastor friend of mine, and he literally set up a meeting with his staff and said, Joey, come here and talk about this. He said, I've seen you post on social media, all this thing about virtual reality, metaverse and all that. Tell us all about it. And I thought it was very interesting because we just had this 2-hour conversation with his staff and they're blown away by, so this thing is real. Yeah. And this pastor actually has a headset. But he has no clue about those places that you can go and meet people, have conversations. And I said, hey, let's set up a time one Sunday. Go with me. We're going to walk together through those places. And so, yes, Jeff, I think the reception is going to be different from place to place. Our church family completely embraces the technology. The leadership add components to the budget so we can support or starting this approach to virtual reality. But I think outside the church, it's still pretty hard for people to embrace the VR alone, much less having a church there that represents have a bar that represents the church.
Now, one of the things that I think makes this idea unique is, at least in the conversations that I've had with you, unless something shifted, I mean, you're not broadcasting church services into a VR bar. Is that true? Like what?
Yeah.
So how does leadership view that? Like because so much of the physical church experience and the church online experience is centered around the sharing of, or the watching, the viewing, the consuming of a church service. But you're not doing that, or at least that's not the aim and the goal of this. So talk to me a little bit.
It's not. And I think what helped is that when you go to the church, the bar, in the physical location, is already a decentralized form. I mean, on a physical church, the bar, we're not replicating anything that we do in a big church setting. So it's completely separate. It's completely different already. So it's not weird for church leadership to look at we got to do this differently. I just left a meeting. And our church is still battling with the impact of COVID in terms of in-person attendance. And I had a conversation with my staff, and I just talked with the leadership today. And I said, we got to figure out a way to show our staff to how not to let the structure dictate the programming. We're in a big building. We have a gigantic building that's not being filled every weekend, but we still behave like the building is full. And by doing that, sometimes we don't meet the people's needs when they come in the building. So I think it's the same thing going to a different place. If I go to the bar and I try to replicate the church service, because even like to the point, Jeff, that when pastor that's preaching and formulate the questions, I tell them, don't ask questions like the person's going to church for 10 years. Because my audience, it's not going to respond that way at the bar. Like, don't tell them about, so when you pray to God, how do you pray about blah? No, they don't pray. So the question needs to be formatted knowing that the audience wants to learn from the Bible, but how more than ever, how that actually apply to my personal life, and ask me questions that made me connect the dots between the Bible teaching and my real life. And we make sure the questions are like that. So, I mean, we're already practicing what it looked like for us to go out of our comfort zone in our own buildings and build something outside that's completely different to a completely different audience in a physical space. And now we're taking that to the virtual space because we got some practice there now doing this at the bar. And now we're going to have to change that again. We're going to have to tweak that again. We're going to have to teach people how to have conversations they're not used to. And they're going to replicate a church service. It's going to be a church service, but not in the format that we are used to, meaning the model is going to have to change. Because if you're going to reach people where they are, we got to change the model. We cannot just stick with the one and believe it's going to do it all.
That was beautiful. I love that. And you started off talking about decentralization, and hey, what we're doing here at the bar is different than what we're doing at the building, which is recognizing contextualization. If you're going to really reach a physical person at a bar, that is going to look different than the physical person that's going to attend a church building to get their spiritual questions addressed. And even building on top of that contextualization, if we're really going to engage with people in virtual reality, yes, there are churches that are being successful broadcasting their services online, and many of those pastors are my friends, and far be it from me to do disparity on that, or even the people who are preaching church services in virtual reality. But what I love about this idea, Joey, is it's shared experience and it's relational. You're inviting people into a shared space for the purpose of building a relationship, building trust. And so much of that in a safe space, in where you're not, you're not prophesizing, you're not preaching, you're literally not getting behind a pulpit and going off. Like that's going to, I predict, and we're building it. It's an experiment, right? But the heart of this is I see that being an immensely successful way to build relationships.
Yes, that's the focus. I mean, that's our call, right? It's our call to love people where they are, to have a relationship with people. And I'm probably going to quote a mix between J-Mo and Dave Adamson here, and a lot of stuff that have conversations with guys that, again, we have been very attached for too long to a specific model, what we call church. So it's kind of interesting because we don't even call our small groups to meet at homes church. We make sure that's very distinct, right? We say, hey, on Sunday I go to church. During the week on Tuesday nights I go to my small group, which in reality what's happening in that small group is the church. And I think being able to restore the idea that whatever I am the church, and we actually have that. So when we first started our house campuses, every time somebody started a house campus, they've got a T-shirt from us that says, I am the church, really big in the front. And because we want people to understand that, like, no matter where you are at, you are the church. You are called to do those things the church is supposed to do, to love people and to meet people where they are and to lead them into a life of discipleship. And the things that do all that is relationships. The relationships is what's going to drive all those things to happen. And we want to make sure that happen in the contextualization of a virtual reality, because we see how that works in real life for all of us, right? So we go to the golf course, they pair you up with somebody you never met, and you start having a conversation, and they drop the F-bomb a couple times in the conversation. Well, by hole number 3, they're like, so what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm a pastor. And they'll be like, oh, man, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you know what? Don't apologize. Just be who you are. Go ahead and be who you are. That's totally fine. And just by saying things like that, man, I'm telling you, it's one of those it's one of those things that let people just relax. I don't know, Jeff, your audience for this podcast totally, but I was just going to be very authentic with people here. Is when people see me at the bar, I may have a glass of bourbon in front of me, and that when people like, here's the pastor at the bar, and they see that on my table, it takes the walls down. Because they absolutely associate that into like, oh, you're normal. And I'm not here advocating for all the pastors to start going to bars, start drinking so they can connect with people. I'm saying that contextualization matters to me because I'm doing a ministry inside that environment. So because I'm present in that environment every week, for them I'm not the pastor that just show up Sunday morning to say, hey, let me tell you about your spiritual life. I'm the pastor that actually do life with them during the week so they can see a real connection. So I think like for us, like how we translate all that into the virtual reality, how we stay authentic by going to virtual reality and doing church in terms of how we be relational to people that leads them to Christ without losing our character in Christ, without losing our values in Christ. We don't have to lose any of those things, and we still can be authentic and meet people where they are. And I think that's the challenge for every church, like how we stay authentic to who we are in Christ, but still relational to people outside the church building.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
I know, right?
Church in a bar, the conversations, the bourbon on the table. Like I don't know the legalism that's centered around that, but I got to believe that doesn't change who Jesus is.
I know.
But the contextualization that maybe we have to do something different to reach a different type of person to get them to see Jesus, to get them to trust us enough to get to the place of that conversation of Jesus. That's truly what I'm excited about. It's interesting. I'm actually trying to remember. I don't know that we've had Dave Ferguson. Yeah, no, we did. I did a training with Dave Ferguson centered around his blessed practices, and we're actually in the process of writing a book with Dr. John Harris from Hearts Like His. It's a Facebook church on the idea of digital and metaverse evangelism, and it's centered around Dave Ferguson's book on blessed practices, where it's bless, it's the acronym, begin with prayer. I'm motioning to this on YouTube if you're watching me in real time. If you're listening, sorry, you're not getting but it's begin with prayer. It's listening, and it's funny, like for Dave, when he was doing this physically, it was eat. And so it was begin with prayer, listen, eat with someone, share a meal. And then it was serve that person was the first S. And then it was share Jesus' story as your story as the second S. And so the challenge came down, hey, can you adapt bless in the digital and metaverse? And I was really excited. But that whole eat thing, I was like, I don't know that I really want to limit this to eating. And so it was funny. We got a bunch of like digital metaverse pastors around and started, thinking and dreaming and talking. And the idea of shared experiences quickly rose to the top where, hey, you know what? We're going to, in VR, we're going to jump into Pop 1 together and we're going to play a game, or we're going to walk around a world together. We're going to sit around a campfire and just start to talk with people, or even something as crazy as we're going to create a bar and just start to like talk, engage, dialogue with people in these virtual spaces. All of a sudden, we're starting to see where that's the first but crucial step in really trying to engage with a different type of person in this metaverse, where, yes, you can throw the seeds, you can scatter it, and some of it's going to hit thorny soil. You can walk up to people, and it's going to get on the rocky path. But man, if you could like work the soil in advance, if you could create an environment where you're building that trust, that relationship, you're pre-tilling the soil, you're getting it stirred up a little bit, so when that seed is cast, it falls into the moisture there. I'm really like digging this analogy. But the truth is, though, that, man, you can do a lot. We can reach and connect with a different type of person through doing something unique like this.
It is, and I think it goes back. You just hit a great point of the trust. We try to really, get people to understand the gospel. We want people to accept the gospel, but there's a trust issue because they don't trust us, right? They don't trust the church as it is. They just don't. So now we have to go in and build a relationship first. And after we build a relationship, we got the door open to have those conversations. That's what has been so clear to me by having this opportunity to be at the bar and meeting people every Sunday. This past Sunday, we had this lady come in, and here's what she said. I'm coming to church for the very first time. That's her first time ever walking in the church. And her first experience is in a bar. That's so, and then to me, it's like, okay, I just want to talk to you, right? Like, what caused you to come and walk in here? And then we have this great conversation. Again, I'm trying to just listen. I'm asking questions, and she's talking and she's expressing, and I just asking questions. I just want her, tell me your story. Tell me how you got in here. And interesting that throughout of that, you start to build just in the one meeting, you start to build, it's not totally build, you start to build that trust because I'm really interested in her life. And then she asks a few questions. I'm talking about my family. I'm talking about the things I do in life. So we are having a conversation that has very little to do, in a moment with the theory of the Bible or the scripture at the moment. We're not talking about those things. But where we're doing exactly what Jesus did, that was just go in and contextualize people's lives into what he's teaching and he's talking. And I think, man, we got so much there to offer as a church. If you can just learn to have those conversations, and allow people to just trust you, like allow the time. You got to give time. I like, Jason Morris is so strong at that. He talks a lot about time. Like that's our currency in these environments. It's just time. It's not, we don't need to build a $5, $6, $7, $20 million building to reach people here. We're talking about a $300 headset. And the ability to just go in and start having these conversations. I mean, whatever way you want to build this thing, the investment that you do financially is not as much as you're going to make in time, in your time dedicating into connecting and meeting and talking to people.
Yeah, that's crucial. The time aspects. And it's funny. I talk with people all the time that are interested in this metaverse stuff, and it's like, put the headset on, go up to somebody and start a conversation. Yeah, okay, you can play Pop One with some people. You can, jump in Beat Saber with somebody you don't know. Like, yeah, definitely. You explore those spaces. It's fun. It's new. But until you sit down at that campfire, until you walk into a rec room, dorm room with somebody, until you walk into the bar and have a conversation, like you're not going to really understand culturally what it is and what community looks like in these spaces. And, for many pastors that are out there, it's funny, I was just writing on this maybe earlier this morning, but for many pastors out there, like they need to embrace the idea. they need to look at that community. They need to walk around and find their person of peace. They need to prayer walk the metaverse, as crazy as that sounds, but start to really look at the potential of what's here.
Well, I look at, we were in Kansas City just, months ago, having this first conversation. And I first of all, pastors out there is going to say, I don't have time for this. And I understand that, right? I'm in a physical church building here. I'm in charge of our online ministry. I'm in charge of communications. I'm in charge of family ministries. I'm in charge of IT. I'm in charge of a weekend experience like production and the worship. I got a great staff, but I manage all the staff doing all that. I got a beautiful family, got a wife, 2 boys, 16 and 13 years old, very busy. They keep me very busy. They do all this the right. You say, how do you find time to it? You find time to it. Like, trust me, you find time to it because it's worth it. Because it's worth it when you walk in there and you see people in need. In America today, the last time I look at it, there are millions of Americans. I'm not even talking about the whole globe. I'm talking millions of Americans daily on those devices. So we can argue all day long, I don't need to get involved in this. I don't need to get in there. This is just a fever. It's going to go away. We can make all the arguments to not go in there, or we can actually let me go check this out because there's an opportunity here. And I think the church, I wish the churches would look at this way. I wish pastors would start looking at, there's an opportunity. The thing that really hit me, Jeff, I'm already like a first early adopter from the moment that we talked. But going back to Kansas City meeting, when we talking to these churches, and it was the first week of vacation, school vacation. So I told my oldest, hey, just get in the car. Let's do a road trip together. Let's go with me in this meeting. And he's sitting there. He's just listening. He's on his own iPhone doing his thing, and he's listening. And it's amazing the conversations we had later. He listened to everything. He's multitasking. He's doing, but he captured everything. That's the generation. He actually, this week, is like, are you going to Houston? He knew. He knows I'm going to Houston while I'm going. So he's like, can I go with you? And because I like the conversation. Again, that's another, to me, it was a sign like that's the generation that's coming, that we can prepare them to be disciple makers through this technology, because that's going to be part of their lives. There's no way to escape that. It's going to happen. So it's already happening. It's already part of their life. So when I look at all those things, I'm thinking, we can let that go. We don't have to embrace this opportunity. But the question that I would ask every pastor is, what are we losing by not going there? What is the kingdom losing by not looking at this opportunity to meet people where they are? Because they're by the millions, they're daily. So to me, that's the challenge. That's what hit me. It's like, I don't think it's worth to let go the opportunity to be in an environment that I can meet millions of people and have the conversations. At the end of the day, it's the millions of people just tell us the potential. This is still a one-on-one ministry. Just like with my next door neighbor in my house, virtual, online, it comes down to one-on-one ministry. We're going to meet people one at a time. We're going to minister to them one at a time. We're going to impact their lives one at a time. But they're by the millions. So we need an army of pastors to come and say, let's do this thing.
And that's really the heart of like multiplying this idea, training, on blessed practices or other systems, and really starting to like equip, because you're right. It's not one to millions, it's one to few. And if we, the church, really understand the potential of the metaverse are lots of small conversations and not mega conversations. It's not a microphone, it's a whisper. And that's really a lot of, I think, the tension of today's church, is because they're looking at the metaverse either discrediting it or seeing it as another way to megaphone something in front of a whole lot of people, and missing the opportunities to build that trust on an individual level. That's so good. Well, hey, listen, we're we are championing this idea of the metaverse. We want to open a bar. We want to be a church in a virtual reality bar. And so here's what we're doing. I built a slide deck, and then I bought a domain name, and then I put the two together. And so you can go right now to churchinavrbar.com. And so that exists. There's more information there on what we're trying to do. The reality is that we're trying to partner with churches to build the minuscule amount of funds necessary to put this thing together. And we're hoping to partner with churches that are comfortable, that are familiar, that want to be conversational in this space. Once again, we're not launching a sports virtual reality bar that's going to have 47 different TVs scattered around for you to broadcast the church services. That's not what we're trying to do. Nor do we want to see like sermons happen, one man or woman preaching on stage. We want the DJ to play some music. We want the bartender to be relational. And we're looking for people to be part of the shared experiences, building relationships with others in the space. And so that's our hope for the church in the VR bar. And we're looking to partner with churches and with individuals that want to be part of this. So check out churchinthevrbar.com for more information on this and other initiatives. And what's, Joey, before I shift gears on things, man, Joey, just any thoughts on that, Church in the VR bar?
Man, I think that's fantastic. And I think, I want to encourage people, we are not trying to do this. This doesn't have to be my thing. First of all, what I like about this opportunity is that we can actually work together with many different churches in participating in this. Because again, this thing is 24/7, right? I mean, we got people from everywhere to participate, to join in. And I love the idea of us doing this together. So I really appreciate all the effort and time you're putting into this, Jeff, and open up doors for people to go and understand and explore. And I even make myself available for people like, I want to talk more about this. I want to understand the whole bar dynamic. I absolutely, we can set up a time, we can talk. But let's do something crazy here. Like, let's do something crazy. Let's just build a bar in a VR environment in the metaverse, and let's just go for it. Let's go meet people and see what happens. I'm telling you, an in-person experience has been amazing, fantastic. It's totally worth it, and I don't think it's going to be that much different when we jump into the metaverse environment.
Yeah, and just even transparently, let me put some numbers on this. I've sat with my world building team here through the Church.digital, and quotes on this thing are like $12,000, and so we're trying to raise a portion of that through other churches. Joey's and Christ Community Church is willing to contribute some, but we're trying to raise other with that as well. If you want to reach out to me directly, we can talk specific numbers. So there is a financial component to this. There's also the reality that a VR bar should be open 7 days a week, if not 24 hours a day. And what does that look like? Well, that's going to be bigger than one individual church. And so my hope is here through Digital Church Network that we can try to find some friends on mission. So maybe some other churches and individuals and organizations that A, have financial vision for this, but B, also maybe want to be part of a unique experiment to try to reach a different type of person through conversational approaches in virtual reality. And so that's the hope here with Church in a VR bar, is to meet these unique people, but to also find like-minded individuals that want to give a shot, experiment, and see what it's like to maybe engage differently to reach this different type of person. So for more information, you can check out churchinthevrbar.com, and that'll get you to more information here real quick. Now, it was interesting. As I've talked about this with some churches, a lot of churches are excited. Some churches are excited, I should say it that way. Some churches, to be honest, they're a little uncomfortable with the bar aspect. That's maybe a little too edgy. Virtual reality is edgy. Bar is edgy. Put the two ideas together in VR chat. Like there's a whole bunch of edgy going on. And that uncomfortability, that's not a bad thing. For some of you, maybe it is too aggressive. I had one of Metaverse pastor pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, Jeff, instead of a bar, why don't you do a coffee house, like a virtual reality coffee house in VR chat?" And my response was, "That's actually an excellent idea. Like I could almost see creating a several different shared experience environments in virtual reality designed with this conversational approach. Like I don't think a VR coffee house is that far away. And to be honest, a beer with a foam top is probably not that far away from a latte. You just got to maybe adjust some of the coloration in the glass. Like I got to think the world builders probably maybe a step ahead to get to that coffee house as well. But I'm excited about this opportunity, but I also see vision where maybe other opportunities will open up and we can start to create more of these shared experiences as we're going. So awesome.
I just like the idea of churches working together. We talked about this before. We sometimes experience some sense of a competition between churches in a physical space, but we don't experience that in an online environment or even a VR environment. You see more churches coming together. So I like the idea. That's why I like the idea of churches coming together. We can just, share this experience, and then we can, it would be amazing for churches to come together and build a bar. And then 6 months from now, the same church comes together. So now let's open something else and let's just expand this thing and let's just build this ministry like for the kingdom and see how far we can go with this. Let's just embrace it and see how far it goes. So I like the idea though.
We've talked about this as well. It's easy to look at this. Listen, you want to have a conversation about the ecclesiology of what we're doing and whether or not it's a church or not a church, what it's going to look like over time. You know what? That's a conversation worth having. But the result of that conversation does not dictate whether or not we should be doing what we're doing. Like to lean into the ecclesiology, should we actually be calling this a church? Should we be calling it a mission field, a missional opportunity? We can debate that conversation all day long. And to be honest, I'm not dying on the field of whether or not it's a church or not. But what I would say is that while the ecclesiological conversations need to be happening, the missiological conversations, whether or not this is a mission field that is worthy of our time, there's no conversation centered around that. The answer is yes. Leaning into the missiological implications, the missiology of what we're doing, to try to reach these different people that the building are not reaching by utilizing virtual reality in a new way. That's not questionable. The answer is go now. And so I would love conversations with organizations that are wanting to go that route through VR church in a bar, VR coffee shop in a whatever. I don't even know what everything rolls out, but at the heart of this, let's figure out how to do something different with this metaverse technology to reach a different type of person.
And the goal is not to just be different. It's to the end of the day, can it really reach people for God through it? That's the goal. So the end of the day is, this is really not about how fun, how cool, how different this is, but it's like, as much as I love technology, some of the steps I see online and in the VR is like crazy that actually is happening. But it never crossed my mind in my wildest dreams that I would spend my Sunday mornings in a bar. And I would be meeting people and talking about Jesus and baptizing people out of a meeting that we call church that happens inside a bar Sunday morning. So that's, I think we just got to be a little bit open to something new. And I think we got to be this much open to the overall goal and mission. And if we can just keep the mission as a big picture, I think we're going to get there together. I think, just a little bit of okay, I can give a little bit of an openness to the difference, but here's the big mission, and we don't deviate from it. And that's the thing about this venture that we're in, if we can call it this way, with the church, the bar, and the VR, is we're never going to deviate from the mission. We're never going to, that's always going to be there. We're never going to go off of that.
Well said. Don't deviate from that mission. Awesome. Well, hey, Joey, as we're landing the plane here, any closing thoughts?
Man, I just want to appreciate your time, man. I think we're living some amazing times. A few years ago, I thought, oh, we're going to land on this online church thing, and it's going to be awesome. And that's one thing, Jeff. A final thought: pastors listening to this, church leaders, this is not your next online church. This is another layer of ministry in your church, and I hope that does not create another sense of desperation for you. But I'm saying you got young people in your church that already has the VR. You got people in your church, not just the young, all ages, that already got that device and waiting for an opportunity to know what to do with it besides playing games. But you're going to continue to minister to people through online church. The online church is not going to go away, like the physical church is not going to go away. We just got another layer of opportunities to reach people. It is very missional, and it's worth doing. So I really encourage pastors to just give it a chance, to just learn more about it. Just go learn more about it. Just learn more. Just explore the possibilities. Talk to people. Talk to Jeff. Ask questions. Bring more people into the conversation and see how this can actually fit into the mission of your local church. We talk about online church being an extension of the local church, be an extension of the physical church. And here's another layer to that extension. That's the VR. And I think I'm excited about it, how God's going to use this.
Yes, very, very much so. Pastor, church person, young person, lean in, ask questions. It was funny. Just last week, we had a podcast, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. We did a podcast with Seacoast, which is a huge mega church, multi-site church. And you know what Seacoast did? They listened to the crazy 20-year-old, and they actually experimented off what the 20-year-old's thought was. You know what? They're reaching thousands of people as a result of it. Go back. We'll put a link in the show notes to that episode. But the reality is that you've got people with some crazy ideas. And rather than discrediting them and ignoring them because it doesn't fit within the physical paradigm, maybe we should experiment on it. Maybe you should invest in them to the point where you trust them spiritually and then give them the little resources that are necessary to do it. Seacoast has invested $0.00 into a 20-year-old, the idea, the missional imagination of a 20-year-old. And as a result of it, they're reaching thousands. What we're talking about here is not you're not going to break the bank on this. I guarantee every one of your physical campuses is 100x more expensive than the stuff that we're talking about doing in this space. But maybe, just maybe, the opportunity to reach a different person utilizing this stuff. Maybe there's a way to do this. I don't know. If you're more interested in the experiment, check out churchinavrbar.com and would love to connect with you. Hey, Joey, man, it's been great to hang out with you. Looking forward to looking forward to Houston coming up in a little bit, and for wherever the Lord leads. So, thanks for jumping on here, man.
I'm excited about it. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. For Joey, this is Jeff with the Church.digital, Digital Church Network, Leadership Network, New Thing Network, and whatever else we can attach the word network to. Thanks for jumping on the podcast, and we'll see you next time on the show. Y'all have a good day.